This is Musical Talk.
Musical Talk.
The UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Musical Talk. The UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, welcome to this week's episode of Musical Talk. My name is Nick Hutson. Two things you're going to hear this week. First, you're going to hear a discussion I had with our friend Robert Gordon about his thoughts on Stephen Ward, which is the new Andrew Lloyd Webber musical that opened this week. And also, you're going to hear a discussion our friend David Herzog had with the creative team of a new musical that is currently playing in London called Ushers, the Front of House Musical. So here is a short discussion I had with Professor Robert Gordon, who is the head of the musical theatre writing course at Goldsmiths University, on his thoughts of Stephen Ward, the musical.
I went to see it. I must say, I went to see one of the last previews. So I saw the preview on the Monday night, and it's opening, it's now opened on Thursday evening. So I'm seeing almost the final version, but perhaps some things have changed since I've seen it. So bear that in mind in my comments.
Is there a need for a Stephen Ward where this musical can go and be fixed and helped and put together in a hospital-related pun?
Well,
the Stephen Ward.
Took me a while to work that one out.
Yes.
I think it needs not just one ward. I think it needs a few wards, actually, to nurse it into health. The problem for me was that it's a rather a missed opportunity, as often the case with Andrew Lloyd Webber and his musicals. The idea is rather clever. I think the world is ready for some sort of show, and it could be a musical, about Stephen Ward and about the fact that, this is an innocent guy, really, He was.
I haven't seen it yet. So
well,
I don't know what happens.
No, but everyone knows the story from the 1960s.
Well, I don't, you see.
When I was a child, I remember actually reading the stories from in the newspaper about the trial, and it was a famous scandal. But it seems to me that this is the wrong composer for this material. I think that what's really disappointing is it's a missed opportunity in that, yes, very clever idea to get Christopher Hampton and Don Black to write the book and lyrics. Yes, from what I've heard, it may have been they who brought the project to Lloyd Webber, but there's a very, very bizarre disconnect between the music and then the lyrics and the book.
Well, I've heard from various sources that all Lloyd Webber did for this show was just give Don Black and Christopher Hampton a load of tunes that he'd obviously done over the years, and just say do lyrics to this, and that will be it.
Well, I don't know.
Does that show?
If that is the case, yes, it does show, because a lot of the music is in sort of phantom style that we've come to know.
Suitable for 1960s London, yes.
Exactly. Now, I must say at the outset, I'm not just a Lloyd Webber basher. I know there are a lot of people out there who are just willing for him to fail. I actually very much liked The Woman in White. I thought that it was a fine show. It was a very good book by Charlotte Jones. I thought the music was entirely appropriate. My only quibble with that was that I thought there was too much recitative, too much music all the way through.
But that's Lloyd Webber doing what he does best, which is a Victorian melodrama music thing.
Exactly.
Technical terms are plenty this episode.
I have the feeling that in the 1970s he might have been able to write the Stephen Ward show that he perhaps wants to write, because it seems to me that the material demands a pop culture approach. It demands that you look at what is obviously tabloid fodder. You look at the scandal, you look at the gossip, you look at the newspapers and how they reported this, and how they influenced, if you like, both the public and the politicians to deal with Stephen Ward. But I think it requires really a lot of pastiche pop songs.
And you also want it to be the third third or fourth bio musical that he did with Tim Rice. Because it seems perfect, perhaps, for this kind of...
That's a very good observation, Nick. I think when you see it yourself, you'll see that. I mean, I came away thinking, well, if only Tim Rice had initiated this and brought it to Lloyd Webber, and they'd worked on it together, because
in the 70s.
In the 70s, probably, because I don't think they would work together so successfully now. But I think that it's a very Tim Rice idea.
Because like Evita and like Jesus Christ even, and Joseph, in a way, it's kind of mixture of the poking fun and the parody of the era and the music especially. It seems this musical is 20 years too late.
It needs the irony and the wit that Tim Rice used to bring to Lloyd Webber's music.
What's the production like?
Well, quite frankly, I am very disappointed. I have a great admiration for Richard Eyre. I thought his production of Guys and Dolls was brilliant, but apart from that, his Mary Poppins was one of the most beautiful and moving productions of a musical that I've ever seen. And of course, he's a great director of classics and serious modern theatre. But I can't understand what the point of the design is. It doesn't seem to work.
Well,
all these projections on black curtains, you can't see the projections.
The design is done by the very, very talented Rob Howell.
Yes.
Projections are done by John Driscoll, whom we've had on the podcast before. Lovely guy, extremely talented. Do you think this is Lloyd Webber getting in the way?
No, I don't think you can entirely blame Lloyd Webber, but I think that something went wrong. And I just don't know what. It just seems odd that the production should be swathed in all these moving curtains, dark curtains with sort of glittering material on them, and then on top of this, I mean, almost black curtains, and on top of these curtains there are projections. So you can't see most of the projections, and that's irritating most of the time. And I think it could have just been a much more simple set, and putting on the projections against a cyclorama would have been more effective, to be quite honest.
Like From Here to Eternity.
Yes, there's no reason why it shouldn't have used that sort of approach.
The choreography is by Stephen Mear. Does that stand out as some of his better stuff or not? Again,
huge disappointment. I couldn't believe it was Stephen Mear. I thought this is rather dull choreography. There's not much call for choreography, to be fair. But what there is, it doesn't seem...
No Go-Go Girls, then.
There are a few... I don't know if they're Go-Go Girls. They're sort of 50s cabaret nightclub dancers. But I thought that the only scene that was staged with a bit of panache is a sort of a musical number, which is an orgy. Now, I've never really seen a musical dance number orgy on stage. It takes place at Cliveden, the home of, I think it was Cliveden.
You've sold me. I'm looking forward to it now.
The home of Lloyd Astor. Well, the scene doesn't reveal all that much, but it is quite funny. It's You Never Had It So Good, of course, which is a rip-off of the famous statement that Harold Macmillan made in the late 50s to the British public.
And then you've never had it so often.
You've never had it so good. Well, I can't say You've Never Had It So Good with this show, but at least that number was fairly well staged.
But we've heard that song. Doesn't it remind you so much of the Ascot Gavotte?
Yes, but most of the score reminds me of Lloyd Webber musicals. In fact, there's one bit which I can't remember now exactly where it was, but it seems to be a direct rip-off of Evita.
And there's even a Dusty song that he's nicked from there somewhere as well, according to Jonathan Cohen.
Is there? Well, I don't know Dusty Springfield repertoire well enough to have noticed that. But yes, there are. I don't blame Lloyd Webber for having ripped off a number of different songs of the period, but I wish he'd done it more successfully, because in fact you want the songs to sound like pastiche, and you're not sure whether these songs are pastiche. Every now and again they slip into typical, post-Phantom Lloyd Webber style, and there is a huge mismatch between lyric and music.
He's described this as a play with songs and not a musical, and almost a chamber piece. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that, but then I think if it's supposed to be a chamber piece, why are we getting so many elaborate set changes?
Are there actually physical sets? Or is it just projections and curtains?
No, there are physical sets as well. Again, that's what makes it awkward, because once you've got one convention, these curtains that are moving and which are projected upon, and then you have really solid three-dimensional doors and walls and windows trucked on from the sides of the stage. It doesn't seem to know what the design style is inconsistent.
And I know it opens in the Chamber of Horrors. Is that scary? Am I going to be terrified, or is it rubbish?
Somewhat laughable, actually.
Good. Well, I look forward to seeing Stephen Ward. Do you see a future for it, Robert?
I don't really. I think it was a brilliant idea to begin with, as an idea for a show, and I think something went wrong somewhere along the way. And it seems to me that just looking at the show, the necessary collaboration between composer and book writer and lyricist hasn't happened, and that's what's gone wrong.
Well, Robert, thank you very much. We've reached the end of the musical year. What's been your highlight, Robert?
I think I have to say the Scottsboro Boys. I was bound to say that because I'm a great Kander and Ebb fan, but actually I was amazed. Even I went expecting something perhaps more in the vein of Chicago, and of course, although the format of the show is quite similar to Chicago, the material is so dark and so serious and very important, dealing with racism as it does, that although I enjoyed the show very much for the music and the lyrics and the dancing, the whole evening was very shocking and very moving. It was
marred by the content, wasn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I'd say it was made by the content, yes. But it was because it
lingers over it like a sort of fog, doesn't it?
Yes, you have to be very insensitive not to realise how deeply serious the issues are that are at stake in the show.
So that night I saw Stephen Ward the musical. I'm not the biggest Andrew Lloyd Webber fan in the world. So that night I saw Stephen Ward the musical at the Aldwych Theatre, and I'm not really the biggest Andrew Lloyd Webber fan in the world. I find his music lazy, quite reminiscent of other things, whether it's his own tunes or even worse, other people's tunes. He's well known to be a sort of a very, very big plagiarist. But I sort of enjoyed this show because musically it was quite surprising. It's why I also enjoyed Love Never Dies, because it went beyond his kind of more Victoriano romantic kind of gothic score that he seems to do. I was worried before seeing Stephen Ward that this musical set in 1963 in London would all be full of lush Victorian romantic strings, and it wasn't really. Of course, there were a couple of those moments which stood out like a sore thumb. One bit reminded me entirely of Sunday in the Park with George, when Stephen Ward was painting the portrait of Christine. Christine. What is it with musicals and Andrew Lloyd Webber and Christine? Seems to the third one he's done now. Anyway, the big issue I had with Stephen Ward was that I'm not hugely familiar with the story. And so much of the story is told on stage that it flies by, and a lot of the music doesn't really move the plot forward. It's let's stop and sing a romantic song, or and the more dramatic music that does move the plot forward is so uninteresting musically because it's all recitative that you just wish it was being done in dialogue. And the dialogue that is there, whilst being very humorous at times, just seemed to be kind of very, very hard to understand what was happening. I left the theatre feeling more confused about the story than I did when I went in, because come the courtroom scene, all these characters are coming on stage saying, yes, I interacted with Stephen Ward, and I don't remember seeing them. It could be the fact that Andrew Keating and I were quite far up in the upper circle, and we couldn't really work out different faces, but, you know, that was my fault with the piece, I think. The music wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. There were a couple of moments where I just sat back and thought, oh, here we go, here's another Lloyd Webber ballad, so I just turned off for 3.5 minutes. Not as many in this show as there were in Love Never Dies. It didn't have that dreadful thing in Love Never Dies where there were 3 ballads in a row. Arguably the best song in the show is Human Sacrifice, which opens the piece and just comes round and round and round and round again and again and again and again and again. And you just think, come on, Lloyd Webber, do something else. And he doesn't. And what really annoyed me as well about this piece is that Lloyd Webber was interviewed on the Graham Norton show, and this is very sort of mid-previews, I'd say, and Lloyd Webber was asked by Graham Norton, has anything changed? And he said no. But it needs to. That's my theory, not Andrew Lloyd Webber's, obviously. And Andrew just doesn't make changes to scores. He records the cast album before the show goes into previews. So sometimes you don't get, the songs you should if changes are made, which is very rare. Who knows? Andrew Keating told me Lloyd Webber will probably say this is the best music of all time, and then 6 months down the road he'll say it was the worst mistake he's ever made, ship it off to Australia, redesign it, redirect it, and that'll be filmed for the rest of us to see. But anyway, it remains to be seen. I don't see it lasting longer than, early 2014. The fact that we could get tickets for opening night, and they are now comping the show, so do go and see it, form your own opinion, let us know what you think on Twitter, at twitter.com/musicaltalk. The night we were there on Twitter, there was a huge, everywhere, there was a very, very sad and disastrous event down the road at the Apollo Theatre. So I'm sure you all know the story. I do want to express my thoughts to all the patrons who were involved in that event, but I want to express my joy and congratulations to all the emergency staff, all the helpers, and especially the ushers. Which brings us on to our second subject of this week's episode of Musical Talk. David Herzog sat in the beautiful staff kitchen at the beautiful London Palladium to discuss the new musical Ushers, a front-of-house musical with Yanis Koutsakus, who did the music and is a producer, and lyrics by James Oban. And also Yanis Koutsakus, and the book is by James Rotger. The cast includes Abigail Carter-Simpson, Ralph Bogard, Chloe Brooks, Will Jennings, Ross McNeil, and Liam Rose Mills. The website is Usher Musical. That's USHER musical.co.uk. And here is the discussion that David had about Ushers, the front-of-house musical.
I'm Yanis. I'm one of the producers and songwriters of the show.
Hi, I'm Ralph Bogard, and I'm one of the actors in the show, playing Robin, the front-of-house manager.
We've picked an appropriate place today to have a chat because we are sitting here in the staff kitchen of the London Palladium, which is just where I happen to be an usher at the moment. Welcome to you, gentlemen. Welcome to the Palladium staff room.
Oh, we feel very at home here.
Absolutely.
That's familiar.
So we're here talking about Ushers, the front-of-house musical. Am I getting the title right?
Yes, most people don't, but yes. People usually say Ushers a musical, which is a bit kind of gets to my nerves sometimes. But
Sure, yeah.
It's a front-of-house musical.
Absolutely. It gives us the entire scenery, doesn't it, to say the full title. So tell us what the show's about, first of all. Giannis, I'll give it to you.
It's about people who work for a house, and we have the new girl, Lucy, who starts, and we follow her through her first shift. The whole show goes through one shift only. So we follow Lucy, and then we see the other characters. Some of them are older ushers who've worked there for a longer time. We have the manager that Ralph is playing, who is a bit of an humorous and a bit of caricature, let's say. He's a very interesting character, and he's quite over the top, as written over the top. So yeah, we follow the ushers in one shift, and it's the press night of a new musical. Oops, I Did It Again. It's a musical by Britney Spears, with songs by Britney Spears. So yeah, it's not happened yet, but I wouldn't be too surprised if actually.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interest about the concept of the Oops, I Did It Again Britney musical, which is the premise of the show that we all work on at Ushers, front of house musical. Does that make sense?
Just in case, get the copyright papers out now, in case anybody wants to take the idea from you.
Well, we can change it to Brooklyn Spears, maybe, or something, or I don't know. Oops, I Did It Again. It's just a phrase. It's a turn of phrase, isn't it? So right, that's fine. We don't use any Britney songs in it.
Yes, no. There's one short ad at the beginning where it's like the introduction of the whole show, like a TV ad that you would see, and it gives some of the headlines of who is going to be in the show. It's quite big names like Michael Ball, And
It's kind of a play on all the jukebox musicals and how they're marketed and how, you just using the songs as taglines and making people interested in seeing it. I think we have a couple of references throughout the show of different shows.
more than a couple,
like
actually.
A Steps show or a S Club 7 show.
7, yes.
Yeah, so it's a running theme throughout about how there is a lot of jukebox musicals currently being very successful, and great that they're successful in London.
Right.
But this is a new British musical with new songs, new lyrics, new story. So it's a kind of a comment on that a little bit, but that's fine.
Okay, excellent. So we've got a story about Ushers working front of house. So what are the different aspects of front of house that are being incorporated into this piece?
Well, we've kind of split the show into generic Usher songs and more specific to the story, to the characters. So we have the first number, Welcome, which is the incoming, which is a bit more of a generic number of what happens during the incoming, and we have the Ushers welcome, the actors who also are Ushers during the show, or before the show. They sing that song where it goes through most of the ridiculous things that you will hear or you would do as an Usher. And then after the number, we go into the actual storyline. So that's when the story kind of unfolds. Then we go through the first act is the first act of Oops, I Did It Again. And then we have the interval, which kind of intertwines between the interval of Oops, I Did It Again and the actual interval of the show. So we go through all the different stages, or let's say phases of a shift an Usher would do. So the incoming, the first act, the interval, and then the second act, and cleaning up, and everything stop counting.
And the finale.
And the finale, the big finale, which I don't want to ruin, but
Fair enough. Yeah.
there's a big fun number at the end, which kind of ties in everything and summarizes feelings and anything you can think of front of house. It's all done in the final number, I think.
Just to put this show into context for our listeners who might not necessarily be front of house attendants, ushers, anything like that, why is it that people in the industry, whether it's in New York or here in London, why do people work front of house in this industry? Ralph, let me put that one to you.
Well, I think the thing is, a lot of people end up working front of house because they are aspiring performers, writers, actors, singers, and for them, being in the industry, even if it is front of house, is at least being part of the community and the world of theatre. Funnily enough, all of the cast members and even some of the creatives have been ushers or are still ushers. So everyone has a big wealth of knowledge and experience to draw from to make this performance and piece as real and as close to the bone and honest as possible. That most of the people that have seen the show who are ushers have come away saying how truthful the experiences they just witnessed have been for them in their own day-to-day life as front of house staff. There's also, when we do talk about it, there is also other types of people who end up being front of house staff. That are people that aren't performers or aren't creators. Right. They're people that just love being near those people.
Yeah.
However healthily they are doing so, we leave
it up to you. That one.
Well, certainly that applies to a lot of people. It is mostly creatives that do work in front of house in this industry, but also there are people who do just do it, because they love it. I mean, one of my favorite quotes ever is Mel Brooks, of course, the author of The Producers, Young Frankenstein, all that stuff, said, I don't know how old I was. I must have been 8 years old the first time my parents took me to see a Broadway show. And he's like, I knew at that point that I wanted to be close to Broadway. I didn't even care if I was working in the men's room. I wanted to be close to Broadway. So I think that is a sentimentality that a lot of people do hold. And it is perfect for out-of-work actors, directors, writers, creatives of any type, or people who just love the theater to remain close to the theater, isn't it?
It is such a community, the whole theatre world, especially in London and New York. Even working front of house, you feel like you still belong there, and even though might not be performing on stage, you still feel closer to what you've trained for, what you want to do, closer to your dreams and everything. And I see that every day in my line of work. So I work front of house as well, and I see many friends of mine who have performance who just come and go. They're there for a little while, but you can tell that they feel that they belong. They wouldn't be able to do another job or survive or manage to go through another job that easily as they would be here because they're so close to the line of work, to the industry.
Right, and the idea, behind getting jobs like that is it is supposed to be flexible. It is supposed to be the kind of work that you can kind of come and go as, you would hope, as easily as you can. If you get a job that lasts for 2 weeks, that you can go back into the same position, hopefully. Or if you go away for 6 months, if they've got space for you, when you're done with your 6-month contract with whatever show you're doing, hopefully you can go back home to the theater where you were at before and kind of, retain that position. So those are some of the nice kind of positive romantic aspects, possibly, of working front of house. How much of the cynical aspects of front of house work do you portray in this piece? Let's start with you, Yannis.
Quite a lot, I would say. We try to touch equally on the positive and romantic side, as you said, as well as the more commercial and more ridiculous side, like prices or the different kinds of people you actually get to meet as an usher every night, because you get certain types that they repeat themselves every night. So that's been something quite interesting, and we've worked that into one song that's called Induction. It's basically the incoming of the Oops, I Did It Again, and then you see the different people coming in and being served, and you hear some generic stuff that they would say, the characters would say.
What about you? What are some of are there any of the cynical aspects of front of house life that you would identify with?
Oh, well, definitely. I think, as Robin, the front of house manager, he is a failed opera singer.
Okay.
So he has decided to put all his energy into being the best he can be, into being the worst manager ever. Instead of thinking about reaching the high notes in his singing, he's now trying to reach the high notes in figures for sales of the merchandise and all the products that they have. There is a wonderful song called Spend Per Head that talks all about the importance of the money side of the business, which Robin's character is very much focused on. And actually throughout the piece, other side of the experience that people have working front of house, like the training programs and the manuals that people get when they join the theatre, are very much touched upon. We have, training segments and exercises that highlight not just the kind of obvious things that people would understand, but are so spelled out for people to ensure that they do it exactly the right way. And Yannis and James have created a very wonderful world theatre company called Theatre Nation, which encapsulates this whole premise of what you should be doing, how you should be doing it, and meanwhile cleverly is interspersed with the emotional plot points within the piece. Yeah. So it's quite funny, but it does talk about the other side and maybe the more financial and practical driven side of working in a theatre.
Right.
It's something that James and I have discussed a lot about, because in the producing world, people tell you, you can mix business with art, but then producing and theatre management is basically doing that. You try to mix business, so the numbers, as Ralph said, and the spend per head and all the figures, with art, and the people that come to the theatre, they see it more as an art rather than numbers.
Right.
So it is a way of mixing business and art. So if anyone ever doubts that, then go and speak to a theatre manager or a theatre owner, and they will explain to you how theatre and art and business mix together really well, or should do.
Or come and see Ushers and learn about how that happens.
Yes. It's a much quicker, easier way to learn, isn't it?
It's more fun, I think, as
well.
well.
More fun. Exactly.
So the next question I have is, as a front of house, I'm a host here at the London Palladium, so I've don't necessarily usher take tickets anymore, but still I'm working front of house. One of my favorite aspects of still working front of house is the audience. You get many different audiences coming into these different shows. How much of that is touched on in this piece, Yannis?
As I said before, we did try to pick the different kinds of people that come in and different audiences, and it's one of the first things that Ralph says in his one of his opening lines, that because it's press night, we have, what did you say, the kind of...
On press night, it's a press night of Oops, I Did It Again. This is where the story comes in. So I talk about how important it is to be on the ball, no mistakes, because we have our vapid critics in and our Z-list celebrities.
Also the weird crowd that have come with all the freebies. So
all the freebies, all the everyone trying to get in. They come in just for their photo and don't actually want to see the show. Right. There's all of that stuff. It's all referenced. It's in a very fun, friendly way.
It's a fun way. So we never thought of making a way of insulting anyone or trying to take the mick out of what's happening.
Sure,
so it's a playful way. It's a playful and fun way. Yes.
I think that's good. I think that's exactly the way to do it, in my opinion. And now, stylistically, what can people expect with this piece, whether musically or with the book itself? What can we expect?
The book, we have a lovely writer, James Schotker, who wrote our book, and he came on board quite early. James and I knew him beforehand, so we brought him on board. And it's comedy. It's a very funny piece.
Sure.
But there's very touching moments. There's some very tender relationships going on between the characters. We have the romance. We have the funny manager. Well, the manager that comes out as funny. And then music-wise, we try to touch on many different aspects of different genres of music. So we have some jazz, some contemporary musical theatre, some Noel Coward-esque numbers. We did try to touch different genres because we wanted to portray the different kinds of people that work in the theatre, as well as different kinds of people that come to the theatre. We have the operatic number for Ralph, who is, since he's a failed opera singer, not Ralph, Robin. Ralph is a lovely opera singer as well. So Robin, yes, 2 R's, really confusing.
Sure.
So we did try to cover as much as possible of all this.
Good. And then does it still then feel like one nice big cohesive piece then, even with all these different styles, would you say?
I think so. Michael Riley, our musical director, he did some exquisite arrangements, and he's worked on the piece very hard, and he made it a very cohesive thing that you listen to, and the songs, although being different, they don't actually feel strange.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have something to add to that, Rob?
Yeah, I just think the piece as a whole has a stylistic element. We have, like Yanis said earlier, we have the opening number, the intermission number, or the interval number, depending if you're in America or in England, and the finale number, and they are all very similar in style, and they kind of bookend the piece, and those songs are done as ushers, because us as the cast are actually also the ushers for the venue. So we are actually ushering our own audience into the show, right? Which is really interesting and exciting. We take their coats.
Irony there,
as well. But so we have that musical style, which is throughout the whole piece. But like Yanis said, every character, to indicate their own personal behaviour, has their own style. So there are this big soaring romantic duets, and also the really contemporary American Broadway kind of sounding, number, and pastiche, and they're all there, but they do all fit together because it's wrapped up in this sound of the Ushers musical.
Right. Oh, I mean, it's trying to do, by the sounds of it, what pieces like Ragtime do, where you have so many different points of view, so many different types of characters that they all do have a different, distinct sound, but they are at the end of the day trying to tell one story, aren't they?
Absolutely, exactly.
So that's kind of what it sounds like is going on here. Excellent. Okay, so what has the reaction from the audience been like so far, Yanis?
I haven't been there every night since we opened, but I was there for the first few nights, and we have received some really good tweets from people. Some people are enthusiastic. People have been rebooking during the interval for future performances. Good. Our box office manager told me, and but I will pass you to Ralph about what's happening every single night.
Sure, absolutely.
He's the manager, so he would know all the complaints.
It's true, actually. This is the funny thing because of I'm not going to give something away to be honest, but we are privy to the responses of people. During, or I certainly am during and after the performance, because of the fact that we are acting as ushers in the venue, and ushers, as you know, are always privy to the responses of an audience during a show. Right. So we have a very unique experience of hearing what people have to say, but obviously we're staying in character, so we're talking about Oops, I Did It Again, whereas they're all going to see Ushers. It becomes a bit complex, but it makes sense, and the audience love it, and they love playing along with us, and that's the wonderful thing about this, and the way it's been directed, in the fact that people, the audience, once they realise what we're doing, play along with us.
Oh, good.
And they understand that they are in our world, even though they're stepping into it. It's very unique and very interesting, but the audiences have been so delightful. They've been very supportive, and they've been so surprised at the calibre of the performance and this musical that's new and exciting to them, and talking about something that maybe they don't even understand, because a lot of the audiences are maybe not, they don't work front of house. We do have a lot of front of house staff coming that are absolutely falling in love with the show and just really embracing it and feeling really happy that there's something out there representing them.
Yeah.
But there are people that just go to the theatre and are absolutely loving it and understand it. There have been people that have no idea, that don't go to the theatre, that have turned up to see the show from one source or another and have understood it and really appreciated the irony, because I think a lot of the elements apply to every other career. You know, when you're guided in a certain way to do something, it's applicable and it makes sense.
There's a telephone call for you at stage door. Tex, there's a telephone call for you at stage door. Thank you.
Get on that now, Tex.
That's what happens when you work in a theatre. You always get interrupted by tannoy announcements.
I may just keep that in. Go on, Siri.
So, so, you know, people in everyday life have desires and dreams. And, you know, the piece is about that. It's about being in a world where you have dreams and the choices you have to make. Yeah. There's a lovely story between Ben and Gary. It's a love story. You know, one of them has an opportunity to go on a wonderful job, but it means making the choice, giving up, because he's advancing quite well in front of house.
Right.
So does he choose the life of giving up the acting, which he thought wasn't going to happen, and pursuing a career in the theatre, not especially on the side of the stage he originally perceived or expected, but going for it and doing quite well? Or does he take the opportunity to pursue the original dream and perform? But then there's the whole relationship. You know, that's a question too. So there's a whole slew of questions and storylines, and we interweave with each other very beautifully, because that's the way of the real world. In an office, if you worked in an office, you'd hear about your neighbour at the next computer, what desires they might have, and they're stuck in front of a computer screen. It's applicable to everyone. So everyone that's come has really enjoyed the show and found it really interesting and embraced it and just understood it, which is lovely. And they've enjoyed our performances and enjoyed the experience they've had and being in the world of Theatre Nation.
Yes, it's definitely a show about dreams and hopes and aspirations and what you want to do with your life, to steal a line from the show itself. It's, as one of the characters says, it's not just wanting something, stuff you really long for, stuff you just want to do, and working front of house or in any other workplace is a way of getting by and on the way to achieving your goals.
David Herzog there. Coming up in a few weeks on Musical Talk, we will be celebrating the Usher by hopefully hearing from a couple of ushers and all the stories they have to tell. They really are the life and blood of the West End, especially in a very, very challenging week for ushers and the West End in general. Please do join us in a couple of days for a very special Christmas episode of Musical Talk, where we'll be hearing from our old friend David Wood and also legendary songwriter Tony Hatch about their musical Rock Nativity. Until then, we hope you're having a lovely festive season, and we'll see you next time for Musical Talk. This episode is copyright 2013.